Just before today's episode, I want to let listeners know that in the last episode, my special crossover with Kevin Hines at the FitSpeak podcast, I announced a thing. Coming in August of 2024, I will be hosting an Ultra Tri-Fest in Whistler, British Columbia. There are 5 race formats to choose from, and the feature race of the festival will be the new Worldwide Ultra 515 Championships. This event will be for every 515 athlete who has ever raced a 515 event anywhere in the world. All champions from 515 events are automatically in, and everyone else can get in through a lottery. Please check out the website, ultratrifestcanada.com, and follow our Facebook page for race updates. I'm very excited about these events, and I hope that you will support them by signing up. It's all good to give them a thumbs up on Facebook, but that does not make them viable to run. So sign up today if you want this to be the next great thing in 515 racing. And starting soon, I will be doing athlete profiles on the racers attending here on the 515 podcast.
You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today I'm joined by Dee Fuller from Australia, who is going to share with you her journey through some tough times. She is currently still wrestling with some of these issues, and I thank her for sharing and opening the door to discussing some of these hard topics. Back in May, just after the 2023 Australia, I recorded a special race recap show. I spoke with Shane Duffy, who had just finished his 6th 515 race in 12 months, and the 2 champions. Simon Cochran, who set the new world record in under 20 hours, and this woman, Dee Fuller, who also won Australia in 2017. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, you might want to go back to help you get the full story for today. The intention of those conversations was just to get a quick recap on how the race went, how they felt about them, and what it meant to each one of them who were doing it for totally different reasons. As you know, everyone at a 515 has a different story and a different goal. That's what makes the 515 podcast, I believe, interesting enough to keep coming back. So I was doing my research, watching the Facebook posts that the race put out, and I saw Dee giving her speech at the awards dinner. In her speech, she mentioned that between her 2017 victory and the 2023 race, that she had attempted suicide. Now that's a pretty heavy thing to get into in a 3-minute speech, but she honestly believes that it is better to speak about these sorts of topics than to hide them away. She's in a place where she wants to normalize this talk so that others who may be suffering do not think that they are the only ones. I asked her if she'd be okay talking about it on the podcast before we started recording, because longtime listeners of the show know that I too advocate for ending the stigma around speaking about mental health. Once she started talking, it became very clear, very quickly, that this was something that was top of mind and that she needed to talk about. I should say that in today's episode, she speaks of various traumas, PTSD, dealing with death, mental health, eating disorders, and suicide. So all of the triggers are here if you are working through some of your own things. What I didn't know, and what I learned 3 days later, when she sent me an email, which was a copy of a post that she was about to upload to Facebook, is that the issues were top of mind because she was currently going through them again. As you listen to the conversation today, you can hear in her voice that while she is sharing, she is still not fully sharing. That there is still more pain there, and that it was only after the recording we did that she was ready to fully face and speak about what was currently happening in her life. Now, this has been public for some time now, and I would like to share an excerpt from what she wrote on Facebook to help set up what you will be hearing today. She wrote, "But bumps in the road are inevitable, and I've yet to overcome the bumps without self-destructive behaviors. In teetering very closely to shutdown, again, I controlled what I could. I silently made a promise that I would quit the addiction before I raced Ultraman. But as months passed, and I was suddenly with only days to go before the race, I feared changing what I was doing and altering my gut's behavior. So 3 days of racing were done on an angry, irritated bowel. With an inconceivable imbalance of electrolytes and nutrition, my eyes were swollen, my brain unfocused, my body unable to repair itself each day. And while I did train this way, I admit that I had always given my body enough time in the mornings to settle. Not to mention the fact that training doesn't carry many nerves, nor as many expectations." You see, she didn't just train while suffering an eating disorder. She raced a 5:15 with her body in that state. In our conversations, she speaks of how her stomach wouldn't keep things down, and it caused her distress and pain, which I'm sure many of you have experienced at one event or another. But hers was not just a stomach bug or irritation from the stress that the body was under. I'm going to replay some of the parts of her race recap before we get into the heart of the story and her various traumas that lead us to today in her current recovery, because this will help give some background to what she was really going through for those 3 days in May. I should say that I've been closely following Dee's recovery as she posts bravely each day on Facebook where she is at. I said that I wouldn't put this information she shared with me out to the world until she was comfortable with it, or not at all if that's what she wanted. She does want this shared even while she is in the throes of recovering. She is currently in take 3 of her eating disorder recovery. She has had 2 times that she has faltered. I appreciate that she's being open and honest about it in her daily Facebook post, as she feels that is what is right for her in her journey through this. Despite wanting to support and respect what she is going through, I will say that I also share this with some hesitation. I would not want anyone to think that this is a good idea and possible. This is not what sharing her journey is about. And I know that people who are suffering from these do not always recognize where they are at. So please recognize the dangers of what she has done, and do not consider racing if you are suffering with an eating disorder. Many people find exercise as a way to cope with various mental health issues. However, combined with an eating disorder, we are talking about a very different beast. Later in the conversation, you will hear me say something to her in that regard. Again, that was not knowing that she is currently battling an eating disorder. As you listen today, remember that we all have difficult journeys. We never really know what the other people in our lives are dealing with, whether they are strangers in the street, people at work, ultra friends, or our family, until they and we are willing to openly share and listen. We are going to pick up her describing some of the issues on day 2 of the race, after already struggling through day 1.
So firstly, when we started in the morning, heading out to what's called the no-go zone for all crew cars, I felt fantastic, which to me is quite unusual because I will never declare myself to be a cyclist, ever. I work very hard on the bike to make it not my weakness, and
Right.
I'll just leave it there. But I felt really good, but I also was very aware that I was hungry. And if you're hungry in the first 50 kilometers of a 270 kilometer day, that's going to be a problem.
Right.
So being acutely aware of my nutritional needs, when I got out of what's called the boring point loop, I actually stopped, full stop, for like a pit stop,
Right.
but didn't take on board nutrition right away. There's a reason for that. And the biggest reason is the fact that where we stopped is about 1.5 kilometers away from a gentle 10% plus climb out of Noosa.
Right.
And to try to feed myself while I'm going up that hill just sounded like an impossible feat. So I knew once we got out of Noosa and headed towards Karoy is when I needed to start popping some actual food into my gut. So and my next big pit stop, my next big aid station, my crew, my husband and my stepdaughter handed me off a hard-boiled egg, or attempted to. The first attempt was a fail, and I said, wash it off and give it to me in the next go. And I started trying to put some real food into my system because I actually felt like trying to pop a lot of gels was just going to make the day a bigger disaster.
Right.
So I was hitting the electrolytes hard and then, hitting some real food really hard. But at 80 kilometers in, I was in a nutritional deficit that I was not actually going to get out of. And so it was managing what was happening, explicitly telling my crew I'm in a really dark space. So I just need you guys to understand that I need a lot of cheering. I need just confidence building, inspiring, yelling, whatever you can do to just help to keep my spirits up, because at this point in time, I know it's going to be a longer day again than I'd have wanted it to be. So my body system was also slightly failing me. I've had some very serious issues with my gut in the past. I've actually had surgery done on parts of my colon to reconstruct some defects, I suppose. Whether I was born that way or not, nobody can say. But it can produce an effect of being unable to clear my system appropriately, I suppose. The best way to put it.
That's okay. They're ultra people that are listening. They love a good bad stomach story.
All right. So basically, it's very difficult for me to pass gas on a bike. Let alone pee. So I found myself having to stop quite frequently to just urinate and get rid of the liquids that I was putting in. So every time I was stopped, that's basically a no speed. I'm not moving forward. At that point, to be fair, though, I actually thought I was still the first female. So I had no knowledge that Ricky had passed me when I made that pit stop in the first 50K. So I kept all of this in the back of my head thinking, well, if nobody passes me, we just keep moving forward. And that's how I perceived the day. So it was then trying to dig myself out of the hole I was in. And it took just over 100 kilometers to get to a point in which I was functioning like an athlete. So at about 180K, just after the climb out of Kenilworth, which is unfortunately something I basically had to walk up and not part of the hill, the whole hill, because I had nothing in my legs. I got to the other side of the hill and found that bananas were my lifesaver. And after some bananas and Diet Pepsi, suddenly things just started to function better. And I started to fly again. And
I guess this is where your experience comes in, right? Like your 2017 experience, your Ironman experience is like a lot of people that are just doing their first 5:15 distance race. They might have packed it in right there. They might have said, "Oh, my body is shutting down. I can't. I got nothing left. Let's call it a day."
Yeah, and there's probably a lot more to it. I have overcome some really difficult shit in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that I can say shit. Um, so I was anorexic when I was 20, 19, 20, and 21. When I was 21 years old, I pulled myself out of university and was hospitalized. I was placed on a heart monitor because I weighed less than 30 kilo. For those of you who do pounds, I was just over 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And spent about 3.5 months of my life in a hospital with windows but no escape. Constantly guarded, watched. You eat, you're watched. You go to the bathroom, you're watched. You're showered, you're watched. Just to monitor and make sure that you're not trying to get rid of food. So I think there are these moments where I grow off of this mental toughness of I don't want to die at this moment. Like I don't want to be in this hole.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen worse in my life. I've been through worse pain in my life. So we know and that we can get out of this. So let's just let's discover a new way. I've never eaten bananas while racing. But I have in practice, and they've worked magic. So we've got them in the car. They've worked in practice. Let's throw them down the gut. Let's see what happens. And boom, sudden power. And I wouldn't necessarily say I had the fierceness that I had in 2017 for the last 90 Ks of the bike ride. But I certainly had movement, including riding my bike up what looked like a river, because we hit a point on the course where it was raining so much that this one little uphill was completely a flooded road. You could barely see the pavement. And I'm happy that I was in a positive place when I hit that, because I don't know where I would have been or what would have happened had that have been, 50 Ks earlier.
Yeah.
I would have been like, I don't want to swim on my bike. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So by the end of that day too, then, like I said, you have like a barely 6.5 minute difference between the two of you, and you're going into the 84K double marathon. That's no time at all, especially if you have to like stop for, problems with your stomach and things like that. How did you face going into day 3, and what was your strategy, and did you think you were going to be able to pull it off, or were you concerned that that's just not enough of a lead to hold on to?
So if I reflect upon 2017, I actually went into the double marathon 20 minutes behind Mary Knott. After what would have been the best bike race I have ever been a part of in my life. To reflect on that and to just talk about it a little bit before I go into day 3.
Sure.
The last 90 kilometers of the day 2 bike ride in 2017, Mary was inches in front of me. Obviously more than inches because there's a drafting rule.
Yes.
But I could see her. And I could see her team. And I unfortunately caught the last traffic light into town while she sailed through it. And I watched it happen. I watched it turn yellow, and I was like, no. And I pulled.
Did you for a second think about running it and possibly take the penalty?
No.
No.
I can't do that. If I did, I wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have won because I would have gone and told the race director at the time, Dale Jordan, look, yeah. I don't deserve this because I actually ran a red light. Yeah. I'm too honest. Okay. But I gave myself a really strong goal. I go, it's not about the red light. It's about how fast I can get right back behind her. Yeah. Mary beat me by 26 seconds after a 3-minute deficit at that light. So within maybe less than or just around 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, I made up 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah. I floored it. I flew. I wanted it so badly. And when I finished this year, I cried at the end of day 2 because I missed my friend. She's no longer with us. She was tragically killed in 2021. Mm-hmm. And I missed that chase. I missed that excitement. I felt like she was present, but I missed that. Mm-hmm. So to be fair, in 2017, I went into the run with in second place with maybe 20 minutes or more than 20 minutes to make up. So knowing that I actually had a lead, I felt confident. My legs, I know, can show up. Right. My only concern was my gut. Mm-hmm. And could I get the nutrition in that night to give me the solid run that I needed to have? So day 3, I wake up, things are functioning a little bit better, but I knew, because the night before I struggled to get food in. I put bananas by my bed, so if I woke up in the middle of the night, I was throwing bananas down my mouth. Very unusual to, eat at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then eat more. Yeah. But that's the fuel my body needs to perform. And that's how I conceptualize it now. It's no longer it's food, it's fuel. If I'm a Lamborghini, I've got to put the best fuel in me so I can run like a Lamborghini runs. And my legs felt good. When we started that run, I felt good. And I just took off, and there was no thinking about what was behind me. There was only thinking about what was ahead of me. Okay. Yeah. I wish that my body had maintained that beautiful feeling that I had in the first 5K. Yeah. But that was not going to be my story this time around. There were a few moments within the first 10K that we legitimately stopped so that I could release my guts. Right. I had really seriously bad diarrhea and knew that it was not going to be a 2 or 3 stop release, but more of a 10 to 15 stop. And then I thought, okay, yeah, we can manage it. Yeah. I got to the marathon. I got to the half marathon point and thought, okay, things are settling down, feeling pretty good. Ran up the hills around Coolum, felt really strong, and felt like I was handling my nutrition really well. Got through the first marathon, feeling a little bit troubled. Again, that strange hunger in my gut that I had felt at the beginning of day 2 starting to arise. So it was like, okay, bananas worked yesterday. Let's go for bananas. And around the 50-kilometer mark, my body decided that it was done. It was done with everything. And I know I passed I passed quite a few of the athletes coming back, and each and every one of them said, "You look so strong." The reality is I look strong because of them. They, each and every one of them, were inspiring me to push through what I was going through.
Right.
And to remind myself that I can do this. I can overcome whatever my body is going to throw at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get there. I can get to that finish line. And there wasn't a doubt in my mind of crossing the finish line. There were a few doubts of whether or not I would hold off,
right,
not just Ricky, but any of the females, because they're all really tough athletes. And at one point, around the 60K mark, my stomach was so swollen, I looked about 7 months pregnant.
Oh, geez.
And could not find anything to release it. And that's when I was vomiting every, I don't even know, a couple of 100 meters. At one point, I had things coming out both ways. At one point in time, I legitimately didn't want to pull my shorts back up because I thought, if it's going to come out, just let it all come out while I'm moving. So the Sunshine Coast definitely saw a few different sides of me. And I had to keep telling myself and willing myself that I can do this. Mm-hmm. Forward progress, any forward progress is progress.
Right.
And yeah, and that I wanted it. I wanted to win. So I was willing to throw my body over a park bench and lay there for 30 seconds with extreme pressure on my 7-month pregnant bloated belly to release what was happening inside of me.
Yeah.
And as I made my way back in this walk, run, whatever I could do strategy, with my husband beside me, guiding me, I was eternally grateful because I was still moving. I was still going forward. About 1 kilometer away from the Noosa Bridge, which is probably then about 2.5 kilometers away from the finish line, my body released this beautiful amount of air. Which was a little shocking because I didn't expect it to do it there and then. And a little bit angering because why had it taken me that long?
Right.
But all good. I was still quite swollen when I crossed the finish line, but the crossing of that finish line this time around was more of a celebration of mind over matter and less of a celebration of winning.
Right.
I feel like there was this greater sense of achievement in sharing it, not just with my husband again, but with my stepdaughter. It's the first time she's ever crewed or done anything like that before.
Oh, yeah.
Sharing that journey.
Maybe the last time after seeing what you did out there.
Yeah, quite possibly. No, I think she took pure joy out of it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I'm satisfied is the word that I use to describe how I feel in finishing this. Right. Satisfied, proud, grateful, and satisfied.
Excellent. So it sounds like your 2017 experience and your 2023 experience are two totally different things, and that you got a lot out of each one of them. I was watching the awards speeches that were given. They were posted on Facebook, and I came across yours. And I think what you said in your speech probably has a lot to do with how this 2023 experience is so much different for you. If you wouldn't mind, can you tell us a little bit about what you were saying in your speech and what happened in your life between 2017 and 2023?
Absolutely. So after 2017, after the race in 2017, I actually went on to perform extremely well in any and all events that I did. I was winning my age groups. I came in 5th overall at the 70.3 Bintan Ironman race. So I actually beat out a couple of professional women, and I smashed the course. It was fantastic. But the highs of sports, I think, only last for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of 2018, I actually, a few things happened in between, but I broke my foot at the end of 2018. And I think things in my head started to unravel at that point. So I went into 2019, and actually went to a race in Sri Lanka, 70.3 Ironman, held in Colombo,
Mm-hmm.
and should have had the boot taken off of me prior to the race. But unfortunately, I was getting a couple of different reactions in my foot that my physio didn't and my podiatrist didn't like. So I found a beautiful local guy who ended up being my runner, and I did the swim and the bike portion, and he ran, and we won the team event, the mixed team event, by, I don't know, like over 40 minutes. It was something ridiculous. And so I had this amazing shared experience, and I was like, wow, this is something that I haven't really done before. And I think that I started to learn a little bit about what it's like to be a part of a team. And I don't discount things that I've done in the past or things that I've achieved personally, but this young athlete, this guy, had never in his life run a half marathon before, never. And honestly, afterwards, admitted to me that he had no idea if he could finish. And his only reasoning for pushing himself beyond his own physical barrier was because I had come in so fast that he was like, I can't not help this person
Right.
to get across the line, basically. Yeah, it was thrilling. And as 2019 continued on, there were some amazing things that happened. But there were also some things that weren't quite so amazing. How far into this do you want me to get? I had to
Whatever you're
have,
comfortable with.
sure. I had to have massive dental surgery, removing all of my teeth, and I knew that was going to happen at the end of 2018 when I broke a tooth in midst of competing at the Ironman World Championship on the way up to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I cracked a tooth, spit it out, and saved it in a little bento box, as one does when they're climbing up to the turnaround at Hawaii. So I had to do a lot of research about what I was going to be coming into with this surgery. And lo and behold, I found what's called an all-on-4. So these are implants that replace all of your teeth, and I needed to get them on both the top and the bottom.
Oh.
I actually had all of my teeth removed on the top at the end of 2015. So as a 35-year-old woman, I was wearing a denture plate. And the funny story about 2017 was that I didn't have any fear of Ultraman, of the event itself, of the distance.
Mm-hmm.
My only fear was whether or not my denture plate would stay attached long enough in the swim so that it didn't float down to the ocean. And then throughout the whole bike day so that I could properly chew and get nutrition in. So my focus was solely on making sure that I had teeth at the end of the day, which is a little bit funny, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. Was this a result of the damage, or was this from your eating disorders?
It's from my eating disorders.
Yeah.
Rather than stealing the calcium from my bones, my body ate through my teeth.
Yeah.
So I should be both happy and also sad. But yes, yeah. So at the end of 2019, I paid an extremely large amount of money to have a surgery to basically help have a better life. And I went into the surgery as one person and came out of the surgery with PTSD. I woke up in the middle of the surgery and felt the drills going into my mouth. They had to break my jaw in 11 places to basically drill bolts down through the jawbone. And I will never forget the feeling of not my dentist at the time being unable to remove one of the teeth and having to drill deeper down into it. And while my mouth should have been numb, I could feel the pain. And I just had tears rolling down my cheeks and just kept telling him, just do what you have to do. I'll get through it. And before that day was finished, before the surgery was finished, they gave me what are called temporary teeth, in which they then have to put bolts into the newly drilled broken bone bits.
Yeah.
And again, it was something I shouldn't have felt, but I could feel, and I don't know, maybe it was just hearing the drill. I could feel each bolt entering its new space.
Yeah.
And my mouth was so swollen and my mind was so exhausted. And I left there with what I can only claim to be PTSD. I've never been diagnosed with it, but just complete fear. And I didn't really know what the next few months was going to be about. I couldn't eat food. I was on a liquid and soft food diet. I was told that diet would be for approximately 5 months. So mentally, I think I could process that information at the time. So I ate a lot of mashed potatoes. My husband, when I met him, was not a triathlete, but after watching me race in Malaysia in 2014 and coming in second in my age group and qualifying for Kona, bought a bicycle and became a triathlete. And in 2019, he did a race where I had stated, I won't be healed in time. And I know that there's no food available. I'm also celiac. So my dietary limitations played a big role in the fact that when you can't just eat whatever you want, you can't just shove food down your gut. You have to know that things are completely gluten-free and safe. And then you're on a liquid or soft food diet, you're just not retaining as much food. So I went into this really dark hole. And I unfortunately had another person re-enter my life that forced me into an even darker space. And while this person was not physically present, this was all via social media. I basically was being manipulated and forced to live through memories that I guess I didn't really want to live through.
So you have a PTSD piled on with another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hit a moment where my husband found out that this person was talking to me, and he actually thought that the person was physically present and that things were happening, and they weren't. And I explained that this never would be physical, but it hurt our relationship. And my husband is my rock. He is the most important person in my life. And I thought I had lost him. And I didn't feel that I wanted to go on. I didn't feel like the next day was a day I wanted to live through. And so I believe it was January 30th. Could have been the 31st. I'd be honest in saying there's a few days of blur. I took what was left of the medication that I had for my dental implant. So a couple of Valium, a couple of Percocet or codeine, can't remember which one, something like this. So that, and a bottle of Advil, a brand new bottle of Advil, and some Voltaren, which is stronger than Advil. And went to bed thinking, I won't wake up, and being okay with that decision, because I felt at that point I had lost myself. I had lost my husband. I had lost my journey, and I didn't actually want the next day. And unfortunately, I contemplate this a lot. The next day came, and I woke up, and I actually didn't know what to do with myself. My husband was still asleep in our spare bedroom, and I looked at him, and I wasn't ready to process the argument that we had had the night before and what I had done. So I decided I'd go for a walk, get some air. I felt sick, but I didn't feel like sitting around was the best option either. So I went for a walk, and then I came home and I contacted my sister and told her what I had done. And she asked me if my husband was there, and I said, yeah, he's still sleeping. And she asked if I had gone to hospital, and I said no. I don't know if I should. I'm awake, so obviously something. I'm not dead, my body is processing whatever I've put into it. And she goes, "Will you please wake Dan up? Dan is my husband. Will you please wake Dan up and go to hospital?" So I woke him up. I showed him everything I took. I collected all of the wrappers in the bottle so that when I went into hospital, I could show the doctors exactly what I had taken. so that they could figure out, what needed to be done. And we went to the emergency room, and they put an IV into me and flushed my system, and then checked my liver and checked, how my body was functioning. And they said, if you hadn't have been an athlete, you would have died. But because your body processes things so fast, you're here. And then asked if I wanted to talk to somebody. Unfortunately, trying to talk to somebody at that point in time, we waited for over 2.5 hours and got to a point where I basically, within that 2.5 hours, had a conversation with Dan about where I was and how I wanted to progress forward and how I didn't want to progress backwards.
Good.
And so we left hospital. I was told my liver is good, just be smart. Find somebody to talk to, and make sure that your support system is around you. So I spent the next few months rebuilding my support system. And I say few months, but it probably it was the wrong time to have all of this shit happen, because within the next 2 months, the world changed. And within the next 3 months after that, I lost my job. I lost a lot of friendships because some people had found out what I had done. And I lost some events. So these things that I had been driving for were taken off the table. And I also, because of COVID, learned that there was no elective dental surgeries that could happen. So a journey with my teeth of 5 months of having temporary teeth in and not being able to functionally eat food ended up being an 11.5-month journey of not being able to functionally eat food. So after overcoming anorexia, after having to deal with rebuilding my mouth, I had to deal with losing a lot of things in the course of a year. And I can honestly admit that my life in 2020 changed beyond what I think I ever could imagine. And the strength and the fortitude that helped me to overcome, it felt like the world just kept punching me in the face. So at the end of 2020, Ironman Cairns actually was held in September. And I hopefully, I wish I could put this picture on the podcast. Let me know if there's a way to display this.
Send it along.
I will. I found this blue hat that I had, and I asked friends around me, can I write your name on my hat? I'm going to race this Ironman, and I'm going to win it. And I'm going to wear this hat, and I'd love to carry you across the line with me, because I can't do this journey on my own. So I collected a hat full of names. Some of them were people who had lost their lives due to COVID, including my aunt. Some of them were people who were a part of my journey for a really, really long time. And obvious, my family, all their names are on the hat, and friends. There's one name that's missing from that hat, but she was with me as well. But I had a lot of names on that hat, and when I crossed that line and I won Ironman Cairns that year. I think I was the second non-professional female. Riding up and down Rex Hill 3 times was, fun. I held the hat up and felt like I had carried these beautiful people with me on this journey, and realized that events like this are so selfish. They're incredibly selfish, but they're also incredibly powerful. And you can choose how you want to create that race. Is that race a selfish journey? Is that race a journey of aggression towards others? Or is that race something that is powerful and that can help move people and change their lives and inspire them to potentially go beyond themselves and to find themselves again?
Yeah.
I went into 2021 feeling a bit better. And then January happened. I lost one of my, it's a strange thing, but I would still call her to be one of my best friends. She was my father's godmother. So she was, quite a bit older than I was. Mm-hmm. She had Alzheimer's and had ended up passing away. 2 weeks later, this amazing woman who was one of my inspirations from my hometown, she was a national cycling champion at the age of 60. Fantastic. Incredibly beautiful human who I will forever take along the memories of riding the streets of my hometown with. She passed away. And then 2.5 weeks after I had lost these two people, my Ultraman sister, Mary Knott, was tragically killed. And it was like, I thought I had survived this world. I thought I was welcomed back into this world. Why does it just keep throwing all this shit at me? Like, seriously. And after losing Mary, and there was still a lot of uncertainty about whether or not Ultraman 2021 was going to happen. I said, look, this isn't the year. This isn't the year to celebrate sport. Let's refocus. Let's go for next year. So yeah, it's been this getting into a race, and in 2021, I still had all these events that had been canceled the year before, and I kept using the events as motivation to keep me healthy,
right,
and to keep me on track and living life.
Like I think so many of the ultra athletes do. They put that next event out there to carry them forward, not necessarily just athletically, but mentally.
Yes, and I got to would have been near August, end of July. I had 3 races coming up, 3 amazing races. I was so excited for them. I was going to swim 21 kilometers up the Gold Coast, literally the entire length of the Gold Coast. I was going to swim 20 kilometers around an island up north off the coast of Bundaberg. It's called the Great Keppel Island. And I was going to run the Sunshine Coast Marathon. And suddenly, within 3 days, all 3 events were canceled. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And I had to sit with that. I had to sit with that very uncomfortable feeling of being fit, mentally ready, and wanting to show the athleticism that I had found again, right, after all these things had been happening.
Yeah.
And then my body shut down. So maybe it was a good thing. I ran to work and my body started to bleed. And not bleed from where a woman's body normally bleeds from. It bled through my bum, and massively. And I had no choice. I called a doctor. What is happening? And discovered that I had some very severe issues with my colon that needed to be formally repaired. I had a piece of my intestine that was getting caught alongside of my vaginal canal because it was dropping so low. And every time it would pinch, it would twist, right? So it was pinching and twisting, right? So I've been dealing with these very uncomfortable feelings and not knowing that that wasn't normal.
It sounds like your
so
pain tolerance is well above most people.
Had another surgery, and was told that I should not run anymore. And I explained to the doctor
that's not acceptable.
That's not really how I function. So I understand your reasonings for saying that, but we need to come up with a plan in which, we can work together, because I can't not run. Running for me is magic. Movement is magic.
That's your medicine.
Exactly. So I said, look, I'm happy to back away from running. Obviously that hasn't happened, by the way. But let's look at this from a different angle, right? So against medical advice, I have continued to run. And I guess where all of these little tiny bumps along my road have benefited me is that on a day like Monday run day, fun day, is usually what I say. When I hit this point of pain, like running with pain, and it's not pain in my feet, it's not pain in my legs, it's pain in my guts. All I could say to myself was, I've been here before. I have suffered through this before, and I can suffer through this again. And no one out here, except for myself, has ever felt this tremendous amount of pain before. And I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to sit on the sidewalk. I'm going to keep moving forward. And I'd ask my husband for reassurance. I'm like, just keep telling me that I'm doing amazingly well, because I just need to hear those words. I need a little bit of external inspiration, I suppose, or motivation to help me, because internally I'm using everything I've got. And there were a few times where I felt that, let's say you wake up with 20 matches, right? 20 matches of energy in the day. I was on 19 3/4, with 20K left.
Yeah.
So how do I
But
use this last quarter of a match?
after what you've been through, I think no one else is going to have the grit and perseverance to do it than the way you are. This is a story that I've not heard of anything like this before. You're blowing my mind.
I think, yeah, I'm still processing what happened. I'm still processing how the event unfolded. And as I said in the beginning, even after I got out of the swim and the time wasn't what I had expected, when I crossed the finish line, I can't look at the time. I can't look at the time and justify it, because it wasn't 8 hours and 57 minutes of running. It was 8 hours and 57 minutes of willing myself beyond myself.
Yeah.
Beyond what my body really should physically be capable of, because I had no nutrition really left in me for the last 30K.
Right.
Nothing. Nothing. And didn't really want to put anything back in me either. But yeah, and that's not how I envisioned this race unfolding. But it is. It's how the race went. Yeah. And I am blessed with this journey. I'm grateful. I am, if possible, stronger. And yeah, ready for what's next, I guess.
So after all of these things that you've been through, and I guess this race just being a small metaphor for what you've gone through in the last 6 years, do you feel like you're in a strong place? Do you feel like you're like that next journey is you're ready to go? Are you worried there might be a slide back? You've got the people around you now to make sure that doesn't happen?
I'm humbled by this event. I'm incredibly humbled. And I recognize, maybe more than ever, that placing expectations on myself is not something that I want to do anymore. And what I mean by that is, I will happily go after any goal. But I don't want to go after a goal thinking about bettering my time. I want to go after a goal thinking about bettering myself. I want to be the best version of myself. I want to see what more I'm actually physically capable of doing, I suppose. And I do 100% have the right people around me. They've been around me. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And some of them showed up magically while I was having this incredibly longer journey than I expected to have on Monday. Popping out of bushes or just, surprising me in the middle of the street, like, and very unexpected. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about an ultra, man, a race of ultra endurance, is the fact that each and every person who goes out there has their own demons. But one of the most beautiful things about it is that when we finish, it isn't about, and should never actually really be about, the time in which it took us to finish, or who crosses the finish line first, or who is the last individual to cross the line. What I love about this event is every individual who crosses gets to raise the tape like they are the winners, because they are. Yeah. Each of us won. we all won because we achieved something beyond what other people, or maybe even what ourselves thought we were capable of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in a very strange spot. Like I'm sitting on a fence, right? Because I see this race in so many different ways. But again, I'll still say I'm satisfied. I'm fulfilled with how the journey ended up taking place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am ready for my next event, which is in 3 weeks, as one does.
Which event is that going to be?
I'm doing Challenge Korea. Challenge has just opened up a full distance race in South Korea, in a place called Gunsan. And yeah, I'm very excited for this inaugural long distance event. I think it's going to be spectacular. And yeah, hopefully my guts will show up in one piece and not, wanting to protrude out of me.
Yeah.
But if that happens, at least I know that I have the mental fortitude to get through it.
A couple bananas and a couple farts and you're on your way.
Oh, I think I just need the farts, to be honest. Yeah. So, this year is all about finding what's next, and part of that is sharing the journey with a couple other people. I'm hoping to do the Ultra 355 in Harvey Bay as a guide for a visually impaired athlete by the name of John Domandl. I've run a marathon with him and my husband, both of us as guides, helping him to go a sub 4 hour marathon for his 60th birthday. Amazing. And yeah, I'm looking at doing things more for others.
Yes.
Taking the more selfless approach versus the more selfish, I suppose, approach.
Live in the aloha, ohana, and kokua. Yeah. Well, so, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and telling us about your race. And, there aren't too many people out there that can say they're 2-time champions of races. So congratulations on being a 2-time champion of the Australia. And good luck with all the future races you do. And hopefully everything holds up for you in South Korea in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.